In the heart of the South China Sea, a Chinese ship made the fatal mistake of challenging the U.S. Navy's deadliest destroyer. The stakes? A high-stakes game of military cat-and-mouse that could have spiraled into all-out war. As tensions reached their peak, both nations teetered on the brink of conflict. But one misstep would decide everything. Who blinked first? At 7:46 a.m., the calm waters of the South China Sea are broken only by the steady hum of the USS Higgins engines. But suddenly, the radar's screen lights up. A new contact appears, fast, closing in from the west. The crew's eyes widen as the tension builds, the clock ticking down. Moments later, the sharp crackle of a voice over the radio breaks the silence, speaking in heavily accented English. U.S. warship, you are in Chinese waters. Leave immediately. The deck of the destroyer feels eerily calm despite the warning. The USS Higgins is on a mission, part of the U.S. Navy's Freedom of Navigation Operations, FONOPS, designed to challenge excessive maritime claims in the South China Sea. It's not just another patrol. It's a statement, a defiant challenge to China's sweeping territorial claims in these disputed waters. In the distance, Scarborough Shoal looms, its reefs barely breaking the surface but holding strategic importance. For Beijing, this is their territorial claim, a vital spot in their 9-line strategy. For Washington, it's an international waterway, and the mission is simple, asserting their right to sail freely without Beijing's interference. The USS Higgins matches speed with the mysterious Chinese ship on the radar, an unseen shadow that's about to come into view. And then, as if summoned by the tension, Chinese warships slide into view, their sleek forms cutting through the water. The wake they leave behind is sharp, a visual reminder of the growing friction. They're not just observing, they're sending a message. In the sky above, the situation begins to intensify. The question looms, how far will China push this? Will they back off, or will this escalate into something far greater? But the Chinese warships aren't alone. There's more to the standoff than anyone anticipated. Something far more dangerous is lurking in the waters, and the Higgins mission is only the beginning. The sound of the Chinese warship's engines becomes a constant hum, growing louder as they approach. The USS Higgins presses forward, maintaining its course, a calculated decision to assert its presence in what is considered international waters. The stakes are high. The world is watching. Any misstep here could ignite a military conflict between two global superpowers. The Chinese radio crackles again. Leave immediately. You are violating Chinese sovereignty. The message is clear, the tone urgent, but the Higgins crew remains focused, their training kicking in. There's no retreat, no hesitation. This is what they've trained for. The USS Higgins, a 9,000-ton destroyer, is not just any ship. With the advanced Aegis combat system, it can track hundreds of targets at once, and its weapon systems, SM-2 missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and anti-ship harpoons are more than a match for any threat. But this isn't just about firepower. It's about a principled stand for international law and freedom of navigation. On the deck, the crew exchanges silent glances. They know what's at stake, but they know their mission. Stand firm in the face of intimidation. From the Chinese side, the strategy is clear. Push and provoke. The warships shadow the destroyer, matching speed, closing the gap. The Chinese vessels are trying to send a message. We own these waters. The tension escalates, and the world holds its breath, waiting to see which side will make the first move. But then, a new threat emerges. Something unexpected changes the course of the confrontation. An unaccounted variable that no one saw coming. Is it too late to avoid catastrophe? As the Chinese warships close in, the Higgins maintains a steady course. On board, the crew knows that every movement counts. This is not just a patrol, it's a high-stakes game of diplomacy, military strength, and psychological warfare. Every signal, every move is being scrutinized by both sides, with the entire region and beyond watching closely. On the Chinese ships, radar screens flash. Commanders issue quick, sharp orders, positioning their vessels in a formation that mirrors the Higgins movements. The U.S. Navy is used to this. Chinese tactics in the South China Sea have long included aggressive maneuvers, including shadowing foreign ships and cutting off routes. But this is different. This time, the Chinese Navy is taking it personal. Seconds turn into minutes as the two naval forces circle each other, maintaining just enough distance to avoid a collision. China's naval ships, mostly Type 052D destroyers and Type 054A frigates, are well-armed and highly capable. Their anti-ship missiles and radar systems are formidable, capable of striking with deadly accuracy. But it's not the weaponry that's the real concern. It's the psychological pressure they're trying to apply. In the control room of the Higgins, the officers know that they're being tested. China is watching closely, hoping to see if the U.S. will blink. If they do, the entire world will see that China's dominance in the South China Sea is uncontested. But the U.S. Navy can't afford to lose this battle. It's not just a matter of pride, but of geopolitical influence. Just as the tension reaches its peak, something unexpected happens. A Chinese vessel begins to close the gap faster than anyone anticipated, far too fast for comfort. The U.S. crew is left wondering, is this the first step toward conflict or just another maneuver? The situation intensifies with every passing second. The USS Higgins is now directly in the path of the Chinese warships, the distance between the two shrinking rapidly. On the deck, crew members prepare for the possibility that things could escalate quickly. Every action, every maneuver is a calculated risk. The Chinese vessel makes a sharp move, cutting across the destroyer's path in an aggressive maneuver. It's clear, they want to box the Higgins in to assert their control over the waters. The Chinese ships are attempting to force the Higgins into a retreat, something the U.S. Navy cannot afford to do. The implications would be far-reaching. China would be emboldened, and any future U.S. operations in the region could be viewed as weak. At this critical moment, the Higgins captain gives a firm order. The ship's engines roar to life, powering forward at a precise speed, maintaining the exact course. The U.S. Navy will not be intimidated.
But just as the tension peaks, a sudden radio transmission cuts through the silence. This is USS Higgins. We are operating in accordance with international law. You are engaging in unlawful actions. For a brief moment, the air is thick with uncertainty. The Chinese vessels are closing in. The U.S. crew wonders, will China escalate this confrontation, or will they back down and call it a day? In that split second, a new danger emerges. It's not just the warships anymore. There's something else on the horizon, and it's heading straight for them. The clock is ticking. Will the U.S. Navy be ready? Seconds feel like hours as the Chinese warships close the gap, their hulking forms casting long shadows on the calm waters. The standoff between the USS Higgins and the Chinese vessels is now on the verge of becoming a military confrontation. The U.S. crew holds their breath. This could be the moment where tensions explode. But then, just as the Chinese ship seems to be on the brink of a collision course, something unexpected happens. The Chinese vessel suddenly veers off, breaking the close formation and pulling back slightly. The move leaves the U.S. Navy puzzled. Is it a calculated retreat or a strategic maneuver to test the Higgins' resolve further? The crew of the Higgins maintains their course, undaunted. Yet the atmosphere on board is thick with anticipation. The Chinese warships are still lurking just off the starboard side. The crew can feel the weight of the moment, the significance of this confrontation. It's no longer just about the South China Sea. It's about a global power struggle that could change the future of international waters forever. Meanwhile, the Chinese vessels don't retreat for long. They've adjusted their position, shifting into a more defensive formation. The tension remains high, as both sides wait for the other to make the next move. This delicate dance continues, with every shift of the ship's rudder, every change in speed, scrutinized by both forces. And then, as the tension builds once again, a new player enters the scene. A third vessel appears on the radar, and it's closing in fast. What does this mean for the standoff? Who's joining the game, and why now? The radar blip that just appeared is no accident. The tension in the air tightens even further as the new vessel edges closer, its presence adding an unexpected variable to an already volatile situation. Who could this be?
Could it be another Chinese warship joining the fray? Or is this a third party trying to assert their own influence in the region? The USS Higgins crew scrambles to assess the situation. On the screens, a quickly identified contact appears. It's a Chinese Coast Guard vessel entering the scene with a clear purpose: to assert dominance over the disputed waters of the South China Sea. Now, the Higgins is not only facing off against military warships, but a Coast Guard vessel, typically tasked with enforcing territorial law and intimidating foreign vessels. The stakes just skyrocketed. This is no longer just a face-off between two navies. This is about enforcement of territorial law, and the crew of the Higgins understands just how dangerous this new development could be. Despite the uncertainty of the moment, the Higgins continues its course undeterred. But now the situation has taken on an even darker tone. With the Chinese Coast Guard's arrival, there's a heightened risk of escalation. The U.S. Navy can't afford to back down, not in a region where its presence is meant to challenge China's excessive maritime claims. Just as it seems like a tense standoff will continue, something unexpected happens. A sudden radio transmission cuts through the static, this time from the Chinese Coast Guard. What they say next could change everything. Are they finally ready to make a move? The radio crackles again, cutting through the tension like a razor's edge. The words are sharp, urgent, and unmistakably clear. USS Higgins, you are entering Chinese sovereign waters. You are violating Chinese law. Leave immediately or we will take action. The voice over the radio is colder, more authoritative this time. The stakes are high, and the Chinese Coast Guard is laying down an ultimatum. The crew on the Higgins knows what this means. No more games, no more warning shots. If the U.S. Navy doesn't retreat, there's a very real possibility that force will be used. It's a dangerous game now, one that could trigger a series of events that escalate into something far bigger. In the control room, the crew braces for what comes next. The ship's radar systems are active, tracking every movement, every vessel, every signal in the surrounding waters. The orders are clear. Stay on course, continue the operation. This mission will not be abandoned, not with so much at stake. But as the Chinese Coast Guard ship edges closer, the crew begins to realize just how fragile the situation is. A collision, even a slight one, could set off a chain reaction, the kind of event that could lead to military escalation and potentially even war. The world is watching. This is no longer just a local incident, it's a global flashpoint. Suddenly, a radar alarm blares. A new signal appears, rapidly approaching from the east. It's not another Chinese ship. It's something else, something far more unexpected. What does this mean for the already tense standoff? The radar continues to hum as the new signal approaches fast, its blip growing larger and more defined with each passing second. The crew of the Higgins watches in silence, their eyes glued to the screens. This is not just another ship. It's something far more unexpected. As the unknown vessel gets closer, it becomes clear. It's a U.S. Air Force surveillance aircraft, a recon plane, flying low and fast over the South China Sea. The aircraft's role is clear: gather intelligence, monitor the situation, and support the Higgins mission. However, its sudden arrival adds yet another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. The Chinese Coast Guard is still within striking distance, and now the Chinese Navy's warships are watching closely, calculating every move. But the presence of the U.S. surveillance plane shifts the balance once again. It's no longer just about China asserting dominance over its territorial claims. It's about U.S. military superiority being displayed right above the contested waters. In the cockpit of the aircraft, the pilot can feel the tension building as well. The mission's goal is intelligence gathering, but with the eyes of both the U.S. Navy and the Chinese Navy on him, the pilot knows how quickly things could go sideways. The stakes have never been higher. Just as the aircraft flies closer, something catches the eye of the pilot. A flash of movement in the water, a sudden disturbance. What could this be? Is it another Chinese ship, or is it something far more troubling lurking beneath the surface? The moment the pilot notices the disturbance, the entire atmosphere shifts. The radar blinks wildly, the calm waters of the South China Sea now concealing something more sinister beneath the surface. It's hard to make out, but there's something moving fast just beneath the waves. The pilot reports back to the USS Higgins. "We have a new anomaly in the water, possible submerged vessel, sending coordinates now." The radar systems on the Higgins immediately start tracking the new contact, but the situation is now more complicated than anyone anticipated. The U.S. surveillance plane has made its presence known, and now mysterious underwater activity could indicate submarine activity, something far more dangerous than just surface-level ships. The crew of the Higgins tenses. If it's a Chinese submarine, the game has just changed. The stakes have risen from a surface-level naval standoff to something that involves underwater warfare. The Higgins is prepared for surface combat, but dealing with a submarine would require a whole different set of tactics and a level of danger none of them are ready for. Meanwhile, the Chinese vessels continue their maneuvers, aware that the balance has shifted. They now have to contend with both the U.S. Navy's destroyer and a U.S. Air Force surveillance plan. But could they be dealing with something far more threatening lurking just beneath the surface? A voice crackles over the radio from the Chinese warships. "This is your final warning. Leave the area or face the consequences." As the Chinese vessels continue their circling tactics, the real question remains: how far are they willing to go to escalate the situation? The tension on the USS Higgins is now palpable. The situation has escalated far beyond anything they had prepared for. The Chinese vessels, still shadowing the destroyer, continue to close in, their intentions unclear but undeniable. Meanwhile, the surveillance aircraft circles above, maintaining a watchful eye on the developing standoff. But beneath the waves, something else is happening, something the crew on the USS Higgins cannot yet fully comprehend. The radar systems continue to track the underwater anomaly, now moving at an alarming speed. Is it a submarine? A submerged vessel? A Chinese submarine, perhaps? The crew feels the weight of this new uncertainty, and the situation becomes more dire by the second. The proximity of both the warships and the potential submerged threat has created a moment of truth. This is no longer just about one ship challenging another. The rules of engagement are rapidly evolving. As the clock ticks down, the captain of the Higgins faces the impossible decision. Do they continue to assert their presence and risk full-scale military escalation? Or do they back down, allowing China to claim victory in the South China Sea? A brief silence hangs in the air as the crew anxiously awaits the captain's decision. No one wants to blink first, but every second that passes makes the choice more critical. They've already pushed this standoff to the brink. How much further can they go before it becomes an act of war? Then suddenly, a new message comes through on the radio. It's not from the Chinese warships, it's a call from Washington. The order is clear. Proceed with the mission. With the Higgins still holding its ground, the situation shifts from an immediate confrontation to a waiting game. The Chinese vessels, though wary of the U.S. Navy's resolve, have yet to make a move. The crew of the Higgins remains poised, understanding that this moment could determine the fate of future naval operations in these contested waters. The world is watching. But even as the Higgins sails on, the tension lingers. The unanswered questions remain. Was this just a game of intimidation? Or will a far more dangerous conflict emerge from these waters? As the Higgins breaks free from the Chinese Coast Guard's shadow, a final transmission from the Chinese Coast Guard cuts through the air. The warning is more menacing this time. You have made your choice. There will be consequences. As the USS Higgins sails away, what will those consequences be? What is China planning next? And is this just the beginning of a much bigger confrontation?